My name's Tony Knight, and I guess I'm a molecular neuropharmacologist by training. The company that I was working for was in North London, but I knew that they were going to be moving out to the Reading area, to Winner's Triangle eventually. And I steadily began a sweep of the area looking for a house that I'd be interested in buying, something that took my fancy. And I was walking past an estate agent's in the main town square in Newbury, and there was a picture of this building. It wasn't a very glamorous picture. It had been taken, as I remember, on a dark winter's day, and there were no leaves on the trees, but there was this dark little interesting cottage nestling at the end of a long, rather unkempt lawn, and I knew instantly, that's the one for me. You turn off the A4 to come up into the village, and it's just as though you're dropping into another world. Narrow lanes, quiet countryside, just fantastic, exactly what I was looking for. When I first moved in, I thought it was going to be really easy to date the place and find out something of the history. It's obviously one of the older houses in the village, and it seems to fit with a style of architecture that's quite common in the area for small cottages. I think they're probably paupers' cottages, built possibly 18th century. It's timber framed, brick infill. And a lot of the timbers in parts of the cottage are very old indeed. They just look like field timber from, I guess, unmanaged woodland. So it's crooked. It looks as though it's been sawn by hand, held together with wooden pegs. The beams in the roof are absolutely enormous, and this house has been, I think, extended in two directions. First towards the north, along the gable end, and then it turns a right angle and comes out into the accommodation that I have. The timbers in here are very much more modern. These are quite straight, sawn timbers, but it's still got a lot of the old features, and I think it was the living room that sold it to me. I'd never been offered a house with an ingle nook fireplace before, so that was a major selling point. Beamed ceiling, and it just looks fantastic when it's decorated for Christmas. And then over in the other corner of the living room, there's also a sort of brick construction which looks as though it might have been an oven at some point. And we've got pictures from the turn of the century in the History of Beanham book showing a gigantic chimney going up 20 feet above where it pokes out through the roof. And of course, one of the things that also sold it to me was it does have a very large outbuilding, a garage, which is large enough for 1.5 cars. I'm not really a car person, but it provides, or it has provided, a fantastic workshop, my little glory hole, if you like, for all the gardening equipment and all the hobbies that I have. I'm always doing one thing and another, fiddling with old motorcycles, probably much to the chagrin of the neighbours. And I just like, as I say, I just really like the aesthetic of living in a small building. Almost like living on a boat where you have to really cut down and just have just the basic necessities. I do have a lot of hobbies, yes, so I've described myself as being a scientist, but I was never certain when I was a teenager whether I was going to be a scientist or whether I was going to be an artist. And I do keep up a lot of interest in artistic things. Egg tempera is a medieval painting technique. Is the standard colour painting technique before oil painting came along in the mid-1500s. And it's a very simple technique. The emulsion that you use, the medium, is quite simply egg yolk diluted in a little bit of water. And you sit there with a little grinding tool and grind your paste, your pigments literally into egg yolk. And then you paint with a tiny little brush. You paint it on traditional, or I paint on traditional gessoed panels, as would have been painted in the very early Renaissance. It's very laborious to actually paint because the brushes that you have to use are so small. But you apply the paint, almost immediately it dries, so you can overpaint very quickly. And as you build up layers of colour, you can get quite spectacular iridescent effects as lower colours shine up through glazes, if you like, of colours applied to the surface. If I was going to go to a desert island and I could only take one painting system with me, then I think it would be egg tempera. Two years ago, Sally, my partner, brought me a rather fantastic set of brewing equipment which she'd modified herself. She's the chemical engineer, if you like, and provides all the pumps and taps and tubing, and between the two of us we're actually putting together some quite sophisticated and interesting brews. A lot of home brewing is really, it's a little bit of biochemistry, and it's a little bit of microbiology, growing the yeast and whatever. So a few years ago I started to pick it up again, and really not thinking about it in terms of cooking, but really thinking about it as you might think about it as a biochemist or microbiologist. It's almost irresistible to be brewing beer. And once again, it feels like a country craft. It feels as though you're in touch with your environment and nature, you know, working with malted grains and with hops. So yeah, it's something I like doing. And of course, what could be better than coming back to a house like this with the living room, the inglenook fireplace, all decorated up for Christmas, and sitting down with a mince pie and a nice, rich, dark, very strong beer. When I was about 12 or 13, my father was a very keen amateur photographer, and I was always fascinated by my dad going upstairs to the attic and coming down with photographs. And at the age of 12 or 13, he showed me how to develop black and white films, and that was another thing that absolutely caught my imagination. And it's only since digital photography has come along I've actually realised that I quite warm to the old ways of photography. And I guess like the ultimate expression of, like, if you like, I don't know, poor quality photography is pinhole photography, where you can just literally make a box at home, whether it's a shoe box or a little wooden box like the ones I tend to make. You just get a little shim of metal, maybe cut a little shim of metal off at the side of a Coke can or something of that sort, pierce a little hole in it with a sewing needle or something of that sort, you know, fraction of a millimetre in diameter, and you can sellotape that to the front of your box, sellotape some film in the back of the box, uncover it for a few minutes on a bright sunny day, and on your standard black and white films you can make sort of rather charming fuzzy photographs which just seem to tickle my fancy on occasions.